What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back to the Made to Excel Fitness Podcast, the fitness podcast for you, by you. I'm your host, as always, Mark Torres, and in today's episode number 33, it's the bodybuilding episode. A little bit of the history of bodybuilding, what it is, if you should be doing it yourself, plus part 2 of the Made to Excel Fitness University of Hard Knocks of Common Sense, article review, and the weekly follow-up. All that in today's episode of the Made to Excel Fitness Podcast. Let's talk about it all. What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the Made to Excel Fitness Podcast. It is Monday, October 19th, and it is a Scottie Pippen episode number 33. I don't have a Scottie Pippen jersey, though, but what I do have is a Derwin James jersey, out for the year with an injury, but forever in our hearts as Chargers fans. And I didn't record the podcast last week, and I'll get into that a little later on in today's show. So I'm actually kind of caught up. So I'm recording this after the Saints-Chargers game has already happened. Justin Herbert throws 4 touchdowns and has nothing to show for it, still comes out with a loss. It's kind of par for the course. Having been a Chargers fan for so long, kind of used to it. There's no lead too big that we can't blow, as sad as it is. But this is a fitness podcast. I'll keep the Chargers talk to a minimum. Maybe down the line, when I'm old and gray and retired from personal training, and Justin Herbert has 4 Super Bowl rings with the Chargers, then I'll start a Chargers podcast. That'll be my ride off into the sunset. But until then, keep the Chargers talk to a minimum. In more non-fitness related news, spooky season, like I said before, is flying by. You've got next weekend, and then it's Halloween, and then all of a sudden we're in the Christmas season, so it's going by very quickly. But last week I watched A Nightmare Before Christmas, and this is a movie that I've seen at least 2 or 3 times before, at least 2 that I can remember. And like I mentioned kind of at the beginning, like sometime in September, the spooky season affinity for me is a relatively new thing. This is something that kind of started either right before college or in college. So my love for all things scary is a very new thing. So I don't think I watched A Nightmare Before Christmas until kind of recently, like within the past, 5, 6, 7 years. So I was very late to the punch. But I must have not paid attention too much the first couple times I watched it. It's kind of like the first time you watch it, you're getting a sense of everything. You have the general outline of the story, but once you go back, you start to get more specifics. And the one thing that struck me upon this viewing is the fact that Oogie Boogie is such a iconic character, like a cult classic character. And Oogie Boogie's in the movie for all of 3-4 minutes tops. And it's not a long movie to begin with, but he's barely in the movie. And when he is in the movie, he's kind of an asshole. So I don't know why people like Oogie Boogie so much. He's such a fan favorite. And not to say that only good guys can be people that gravitate towards, because I'm a guy that, I like Jason Voorhees and I like Jedediah Sawyer, who are obviously not good guys. But Oogie Boogie's kind of just a jerk. So that's kind of a weird thing to me. And I guess is a testament to creating such fascinating characters and having people want more. You got enough of a taste of Oogie Boogie, but you didn't get too much of a taste of Oogie Boogie, leaving the audience wanting for more. It's kind of like Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is not in the movie for very long either. Just another character that you get enough of that you want more of. But it's a very strange kind of observation that I had with the movie. But that wraps up the intro. I want to get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode because I've got a lot to talk about. So my original intention for today's episode was actually I was going to tell you guys 7 different training styles that you guys could try if your training has gotten boring. And the reason I wanted to talk about that was because in episodes 30 and 31, I talked about having fun and trying something new. And both of those things are pretty much the same tip, just said in different ways. It's all about finding a training style that you enjoy doing, training style that's the most fun for you, because it's obviously going to be much easier for you to do in the long run. It's going to make your fitness journey that much easier. And if you're a person who's super adamant against working out, you super adamant against fitness in general, as bad as this may sound, finding the training style that you hate the least is probably in your best interest. And furthermore, this is something that's kind of a new concept to me that I didn't realize that people thought this way, but there's people out there that, and you might be one of them, that you might be under the assumption or of the thought process, of the school of thought that fitness and working out is something that's not necessary. It's something that's kind of optional. And if we want to be super literal, I guess it is. Like, I can see the point that you make. If you go without oxygen for X amount of minutes, you'll die. If you go without water for X amount of days, you'll die. And the morbidity level of this podcast just skyrocketed, but stick with me for a little bit. So in that sense, fitness and working out is not necessary in the short term. But it's kind of like wearing a seatbelt. It's not a problem until it is. If you're in a car and you don't have a seatbelt on and that car gets into a bad wreck, that could very well be the difference between life and death, is wearing a seatbelt. And you might not think about it. You might not ever get into a car knowing or thinking about that you're going to get in a car crash, but things happen. So wearing a seatbelt is obviously super important. Please wear a seatbelt when you're in a car. And fitness is the same way. You might not be staring anything in the face right now, but there's things like diabetes and cholesterol and high blood pressure and metabolic syndrome that are these medical conditions that could possibly affect you later on in life, and you have a portion of control over that right now with your fitness and your health. Part of it's going to be genetic. Some things are just unavoidable. Nick Jonas was super young when he got type 1 diabetes. It's not like, he was harboring bad habits for many years. He was young when it happened. That was genetically something that was always going to happen to him, but he used fitness and he used health to kind of suppress those things and keep the diabetes under control. So part of it is not in your hands, but a good part of it is. This is something that you might not be facing these things right now, but maybe later on down the line, you'd rather prevent something than be staring it right in the face and be late to the punch. So, I'm a person who has dedicated my life to fitness, so I understand that it's probably easier for me to make that concession than some of you guys listening, or you listening right now. I understand that people have different viewpoints of the world, and that's what makes the human race so beautiful, is we all have different views of the world, but hopefully you can go back and listen to the last few minutes of this episode if you are under the assumption that, fitness is something that's unnecessary. Hopefully I can sway you at least in that manner. So finding something that you enjoy doing is obviously step number one. And, this is something that's relatively new to me. It wasn't until the last few weeks that at the gym that I work at, somebody came in and they wanted to cancel their membership. And I just so happened to be around and hear the conversation. And the person at the front desk asked what the reason for cancellation is. And they said, it's not in my lifestyle anymore. And in my head, I said, what the fuck does that mean? Fitness and health is not like the emo phase in high school where you dyed your hair black and you listen to My Chemical Romance. That's something you grow out of eventually. Fitness and health is very literally, at the end of the day, might not be immediate, but over a long period of time, it could be the difference between life and death. Once again, morbidity levels rising, but it's the truth. Fitness is something that should be a part of your life. It's something that should be an important part of your life. You should make room for it. And it's going to give you the best results. It's really a matter of life and death. But hopefully, finding a way that you can enjoy doing it so it's not a detriment to your life is going to be super important. And a big part of that is finding a training style that you enjoy doing. So that's what today's episode is all about. And obviously, I tried to do all 7 in one episode and it didn't go very well. I did that last week and I got through like training style number 2 and it was 25 minutes into the episode, so it was going to be like an hour-long episode, and I figured I might as well just break them down into each episode. So over the next 7 to 8 episodes, you might hear about different training styles that you've never heard of before, and hopefully something clicks and you can find something that you enjoy doing and that you have fun with and becomes a regular part of your life. But today's episode is all about bodybuilding. So I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia page here. I'm going to forewarn you, there's a lot of reading in today's episode, but it's kind of I want to give you a brief history, a brief overview as to what bodybuilding is. Bodybuilding is the use of progressive resistance exercise to control and develops one's musculature for aesthetic purposes. An individual who engages in this activity is referred to as a bodybuilder. In professional bodybuilding, competitors appear in lineups and perform specified poses and later individualized posing routines for a panel of judges who rank them based on symmetry, muscularity, size, conditioning, posing, and stage presentation. Bodybuilders prepare for competitions through the elimination of non-essential body fat, enhanced at the last stage by a combination of extracellular dehydration and carbo loading. To achieve maximum muscular definition and vascularity, they also tan and shave to accentuate the contrast of their skin under the spotlights. Some bodybuilders use anabolic steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs to build muscle and recover from injuries more quickly, but competitions sometimes ban using them because of the health risks or considerations regarding fair competition. Despite some calls for testing for steroids, the leading bodybuilding federation, the National Physique Committee, the NPC, does not. The winner of the annual IFBB Mr. Olympia contest is generally recognized as the world's top male professional bodybuilder. Since 1950, the NABBA Universe Championships have been considered the top amateur bodybuilding contest, with notable winners such as Reg Park, Lee Priest, Steve Reeves, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Winners generally go on to become professional athletes. Early history. Stone lifting traditions were practiced in ancient Egypt, Greece, and I don't know how to say that place. Western weightlifting developed in Europe from 1880 to 1953, so it's been around for a long time, with strong men displaying feats of strength for the public and challenging each other. The focus was not on their physique, and they often had large bellies and fat limbs. But then comes Eugene Sandow. Bodybuilding developed in the late 19th century, promoted in England by German Eugene Sandow. Now considered as the father of modern bodybuilding, he allowed audiences to enjoy viewing his physique in muscle display performances. Although audiences were thrilled to see a well-developed physique, the men simply displayed their bodies as part of a strength demonstration or wrestling matches. Sandow had a stage show built around these displays through his manager, Florence Ziegfeld. I'm probably butchering these names. The Oscar-winning 1936 musical film, The Great Ziegfeld, depicts the beginning of modern bodybuilding when Sandow began to display his body for carnivals. Sandow was so successful at flexing and posing his physique that he later created several businesses around his fame and was among the first to market products branded with his name. He was credited with inventing and selling the first exercise equipment for the masses, machine dumbbells, spring pulleys, and tension bands. Even his image was sold by the thousands in cabinet cards and other prints. Sandow was a perfect Brazilian, a standard of ideal body proportions, close to those of ancient Greek and Roman statues. Men's physiques were then judged by how closely they matched these proportions. Then it goes on to the first large-scale bodybuilding competition, which you guys don't need to know. Notable early bodybuilders, blah, 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 organizations. And then it goes into professional bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding, men's physique. So there's different subsets of bodybuilding. As it pertains to the sport, there's different kind of categories. You have like your regular men's bodybuilding. Then you have like a lower weight class, 212, men's physique, classic physique. These are all things that are different subsets of bodybuilding. And then it goes into the preparation, blah, 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 blah. Then it goes into muscle growth. Bodybuilders use three main strategies to maximize muscle hypertrophy: strength training through weights or elastic hydraulic resistance, specialized nutrition, incorporating extra protein and supplements when necessary, adequate rest, including sleep and recuperation between workouts. Bodybuilding often shorten these three steps into the well-known motto, eat clean, train hard, sleep well. And then it goes into specifics. I'm not going to go into all of that with you guys today. But that's kind of the brief overview as the history of bodybuilding. As of today, Sandow is one of the, he's kind of the father, like they said, of modern bodybuilding. When you go to the Mr. Olympia and you win the Mr. Olympia, you get the Sandow. The Sandow is the trophy that you get for winning the show. Obviously, bodybuilding as a sport, a lot of these training styles that I'll talk about in the future episodes kind of originate as sports. That's just kind of how they start. Most of you guys out there, I would assume 99.99% of you guys out there, will never get to the point where you're going to step on stage and actually compete in a bodybuilding show. But that's kind of where just the training style stems from. So you don't have to go to the point where you're going to step on stage and be ridiculed by judges. But that's just kind of the history of it. If you are interested in the sport of bodybuilding, some quintessential viewing is going to be pumping iron, which is like, the Titanic of, that's a terrible example, but it's the main staple film of bodybuilding of all time. And then you've got some newer ones, Generation Iron, there's 3 of them. So if you're interested in the sport of bodybuilding, those are definitely documentaries / movies that you should watch. Pumping Iron, Generation Iron 1, 2, and 3. But then going into the training style itself. So are there any specific lifts that are unique to bodybuilding? No. Nothing specific. Pretty much anything that you've ever done in the gym yourself, or if you've ever seen other people do, is probably fair game. It probably fits into a bodybuilding style training program really well, a good majority of it at least. There's going to be a big emphasis on dumbbells. There's going to be a big emphasis on machines. Barbells you can use, but you won't use as much as some of the other training styles that I'll talk about in future episodes. So specific lifts for bodybuilding, there really aren't any. Training emphasis. The training emphasis of bodybuilding is strictly growing as much muscle as you possibly can and forming your physique. So it's all about appearance. There's very little performance aspect when it comes to bodybuilding. You're not trying to get stronger. You're not trying to get faster. None of that. It's all about looking the best that you possibly can look. So if you are a very physique-driven person, appearance-driven person, there's going to be a big emphasis when it comes to bodybuilding on those two things. So if that's your boat, this is something for you. Training style. There's going to be lighter weights for higher amount of reps in most bodybuilding style programs. And the other thing to think about is one of the most important things when it comes to bodybuilding is this thing called time under tension. And all time under tension is whenever you're doing any sort of workout, the muscle that you use is creating tension, and that's ultimately what moves the weight from point A to point B, unless you're doing like an isometric movement where you're not moving at all. But regardless, whatever exercise you're doing, you're creating tension in the muscle. And in time under tension, you want to create the most tension you possibly can under the most time you possibly can. Or for the most time you possibly can, I should say. And what this might look like is back when I was in college, there was this kid there at the gym all the time. No idea what his name was, no idea who he was, no idea where he is today, but he was a quintessential gym bro. The kind of guy that would cut his shirt from like the neck all the way down to his waist. At that point, like, what's the point of wearing the shirt? But that's just how he was. And this guy was ripped. Like, you could see every single crevice of every single muscle that was ever put on his body. Wasn't an overly big guy when it comes to muscles. Like, if he put on a regular shirt, you would probably tell that he was fit, but you wouldn't tell that he looked like that under the shirt. So he wasn't like massive. But definitely very, very lean. And he would, no joke, go and do bicep curls with like a 5 or a 10-pound dumbbell, which is very light for a guy his size. And he would just do them very slowly. They were very slow, methodical reps. And he was trying to maximize his time under tension. He wanted to put the bicep in as much tension as he possibly could for as long as he possibly could. And that's really going to try to recruit the most muscle fibers you can and give you the best results as it comes to building muscle. And at that point, I didn't have the knowledge that I had now. So in my head, I was like, this kid looks ridiculous. And I was kind of making fun of him. But at the end of the day, joke's on me because he got more progress than I ever did in my entire life because he was utilizing time under tension. He was definitely doing a bodybuilding style program. So, of course, you guys don't have to go to that extent, but definitely thinking about the reps and being a little bit more methodical about it is definitely something that falls under the bodybuilding style umbrella of training. So something to think about. Programming, more so than any of the other training styles that I'll talk about, there's probably going to be bodybuilding is going to be the one that has the most days of the week where you're working out. So it's going to be probably at the very least 4 days, but probably if not closer to like 5, 6, 7 days. And really the reason for that is because in a bodybuilding style program, you're really emphasizing the glamour muscles. So things that will look good on stage with your shirt off. Obviously, once again, you're not going to get to the point where, or I don't think you're going to get to the point where you're stepping on stage and you're actually performing, you're actually doing a bodybuilding show, but that's where a lot of the emphasis of bodybuilding style programs go to, is glamour muscles, because that's going to be the most important. It's going to be more of a bro split. It's going to be a lot of like back and bis, chest and tris, shoulders and biceps, legs and triceps, calves and abs, right? There's going to be a weird, crazy split because you're trying to hit every single muscle group, where a lot of these glamour muscles kind of get glossed over in some other training styles. So you're going to be working out for a lot more days of the week in a typical bodybuilding style program. Of course, you could tailor it to whatever works for you. The pros of a bodybuilding style program. Pro number 1, if you want to look good, bodybuilding is probably for you. And of course, looking good is not the most important. Looking good is not the only important thing. But I'm not here to tell you that your desire to want to look a certain way is warranted or unwarranted. That's not my place to do so. Of course, people want to look good. But if looking good is your main emphasis, bodybuilding style is the way to go, because it's all about appearance. There's very little performance aspect when it comes to bodybuilding. It's all about looking the best you possibly can at any given point. Pro number 2 is there's a huge emphasis on muscle. Bodybuilding is all about building as much muscle as you possibly can. So if muscle is important to you, once again, this kind of ties in with appearance and your physique, bodybuilding style is the place for you. Pro number 3 is there's very small, if any, learning curve to get into a bodybuilding style program. Like I said, there's no specific lifts when it pertains to bodybuilding. There's nothing that you have to learn. Pretty much, if you have a basic understanding of the gym and how it works, you probably know 85 to 90% of all the lifts you ever possibly need. It's just a matter of learning how to do time under tension and how that kind of works. That'll be the learning curve that you have, but that's a very small learning curve. So for somebody who's just getting into the gym, who's just getting into training, bodybuilding style is a very easy one to kind of just jump in. Cons of bodybuilding style program. One, and this is purely my opinion, it can be kind of boring. When you talk about time under tension, that thing takes a long time. You've got to be very focused on a muscle in order to maximize the time under tension. For me, I found that to be very boring. I was in the gym and, my mind was wandering, and all of a sudden, I lose the time under tension. I lose the tension. And it's kind of all for naught. So if you're a person who gets distracted very easily, it's going to be very hard for you to do a bodybuilding style program, or at least a very quintessential, traditional bodybuilding style program. Con number 2, there's no performance aspect at all. So if you're an athlete, you want to get bigger, faster, stronger, that's not going to happen on a bodybuilding style program because the emphasis is purely on physique and appearance. It's not about getting stronger. It's not about lifting more weight. Of course, that'll happen. That's a byproduct of just lifting in general. But just, you're not going to be more athletically inclined after doing a bodybuilding style program. So that's something to think about. If performance is something that is important to you, bodybuilding might not be the way to go. Con number 3, it's going to take a lot of time. You're going to work out for probably more days of the week. And imagine if you're doing a half an hour workout right now, but you were told to maximize your time under tension, so you want to do everything that you do already, just twice as slow. So without ever adding anything, you could do the same exact workout. Your workout can go from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, just increasing the time under tension. So if you're a person who has a very limited amount of time, bodybuilding might be a stretch for you to try to do. Like I said, at least in the traditional sense, you can always kind of adjust it to working for you. So that about wraps up the bodybuilding portion of the show. Bodybuilding is essentially going to be very appearance-driven, muscular-driven, lots of lower weights for higher reps, lots of days of the week working out on glamour muscles, big emphasis on machines and dumbbells, and I think that's it. So if that is something, obviously that's a skeleton of it, that's the outline of it. If that is something that sounds appealing to you, definitely do a deeper dive and check it out and see if that's something that you might enjoy doing going forward. At least give it a shot if it sounds at least somewhat interesting to you. But now that that's done, let's get into the Made to Excel Fitness University of Hard Knocks of Common Sense. Mark Torres, Made to Excel Fitness University of Hard Knocks of Common Sense. So in last week's episode, I did the first part of the article review for Muscle and Fitness's 13 Things Every Fitness Beginner Should Know, and it just so happened to correlate with the last episode 31 that I did was all about things that I wish I knew when I first started my fitness journey. So it just so happened that this popped up in my email, and I was like, this is too good to be true. I can't not review it. So I did. There's 13 things. I did 1 through 6 in last week's episode. I'll do 7 through 13 in this week's episode. So hopping right into it. Thing number 7 that they say that every beginner should know is that should I start a supplement regimen? In the beginning of your health and fitness journey, the main focus should be on implementing an intelligent and efficient workout regimen and a healthy and balanced nutrition program. Anyone who tells you to immediately jump on all sorts of sports supplements is either misinformed or trying to make a buck. Well, most of them. After spending 8 to 12 solid weeks in the gym, working hard and consistently while carefully following a sound diet, it's appropriate to think about adding supplements into the mix. It is absolutely not appropriate to think about adding supplements to the mix. Spending 8 to 12 weeks is 2 to 3 months. So somebody that just went into the gym, they've been working out hard for 2 to 3 months, just put them on a bunch of supplements, makes zero sense. Nobody needs to be on supplements. When I talk about going to that next level, if you're a person who has very lofty fitness aspirations and you want to go from being good to great, then you can consider taking supplements. That's something that you could possibly do. But for most people, you don't need supplements. You don't need to put yourself in a position where you feel like you need to spend a bunch of money on things that might give you a very marginal increase in performance or aesthetics or whatever. It's probably a waste of money for a good majority of people. Unless you're really deficient in something, don't worry about supplements, but that's going to be very specific to the person, so I guess take it with a grain of salt. Number 8, is there really a 30 to 60 minute window to consume protein post-workout, and why? It's actually true that within the first hour of working out with intense weights, the body is in a special metabolic state where protein and carbohydrates are partitioned towards muscle and away from fat cells. This is because during this period, insulin sensitivity is extremely high, which means amino acids and carbs will be readily available to be absorbed, assimilated, and stored directly into damaged muscle cells. This allows for repair, recovery, and recuperation to start immediately, and over time, you'll get far better results than eating your post-workout meal outside of this anabolic window. I struggle reading sometimes, guys. So there's no way to know that this is true or not. The fact that they're saying it so matter-of-factly is the part that kind of pisses me off the most. It's like, yeah, in the first hour, everything's up. I don't think this has ever been proven. I don't think anybody knows for sure. There's been plenty of studies that say kind of different conflicting things. For a long time, there was a big study out there that said that your anabolic window is pretty much just open for 24 to 48 hours after doing an intense workout. So if you do a workout on Monday, your anabolic window is open until that same time on Wednesday. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But it's not like they definitively say you've got to eat within the hour or it's not going to count. So what happens if I eat at the 61st minute or the 62nd minute? Is my anabolic window closed? No, of course not. That's very kind of an arbitrary thing to say. It's you got to do it within the first hour. Of course, if you can, it's probably not it's not a detriment to your life to if it's possible for you to eat kind of sooner rather than later after working out. It's definitely not going to hurt you. But if you just absolutely can't, you're busy, you're going to go to work, you can't do it. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to try to force yourself to eat within the first hour of working out. Don't feel the need to do that. Number 9, I'm severely out of shape. Is there anything that isn't safe for me to do? While it's likely safe for you to begin a light workout program, preferably under the care of an experienced and educated personal trainer, it would be best for you to consult with your physician before even stepping into a gym. Getting the green light from your doc will give you the peace of mind and keep you from needlessly causing yourself harm, illness, or injury, especially when you're taking steps to improve your health and wellness. Don't be disheartened. Just talk to your doctor first to get a physical and come up with a strategy. This I actually agree with. If you're a person who has any concerns, going to your doctor first is going to be super important. They'll say, you're good to go, or, wait a second. It's better than hopping into something that you're not ready for and putting yourself in a precarious position. So, if you want to get a doctor's opinion first, by all means. Tip number 10, do you recommend any non-workout activities to get fit? Absolutely, yes. Not only are outside activities great for your body, they've been proven to improve your well-being, your mental well-being. Depression is often a factor for people who find it difficult to get in shape. These types of activities are especially great when it comes to getting into your cardiovascular training. It's far more enjoyable to hike, dance, bike, run stairs, or swim than to walk on a treadmill every session. Once again, another good one. This is a good tip. This kind of goes in hand with the next few episodes that I'll do, finding your training style. So you don't have to be in a gym. You don't have to be working out specifically. You can be doing other things that keep you active that are perfectly fine as well. Don't feel the need to, like they said, be on a treadmill all the time. So Muscle and Fitness, good job on that one. Number 11, how do I know my training is working? What performance measures should I be tracking? Carefully tracking your progress is extremely important when embarking on any kind of physical fitness program. If possible, it's a good idea to meet with a coach or trainer every 2 to 4 weeks to have your weight, body fat, and complete measurements taken. You can take it a step further by having regular blood tests via your primary physician if you are also trying to regulate general health measures like total cholesterol, ratio of LDL to HDL, triglycerides, and blood pressure. Oddly enough, a very good indicator of progress is feeling how your clothes fit. Obviously, if you're looking to get bigger and more muscular, you know you're headed in the right direction if your shirts are fitting tighter in the arms, chest, and through the back. The scale is not always a telltale sign of whether your program is yielding results, since it's very possible for people, especially women, to drop several sizes without ever losing a single pound. Always remember that muscle weighs more than fat, but it takes up far less space. So, I'm kind of in agreement with this. In terms of measurements, if you want to weigh yourself every day or every week, obviously it's important to do it at the same exact time every time that you do it. But keep in mind, your weight's always going to fluctuate. As long as the general trend is going in the direction that you want to, that's going to be the most important. But if you're trying to lose weight, there might be a point where you gain a little bit of weight or you don't lose the weight that you think that you're going to lose. It's not that your training style or your training program isn't working. It's just it's taking some time to work. So whatever, that's kind of user sort of decision to make, whether or not you want to weigh yourself often or not often. But like they said, the measure of like how your clothes fit is a good one. I highly encourage people to take progress pictures because it's one of those things where your body could be changing from day to day to day. You would never notice it, but you might notice it after a long time and a drastic difference has occurred. But on a day-to-day basis, you might not ever realize that you're making progress, and you might get disheartened by that. So taking progress pictures, it'll actually give you can see it, the progress being made. However often you want to take those progress pictures, every week or so. You probably don't have to do it every day, but just something to kind of keep track of. It might not always be the weight. It might not always be the scale. The scale might not give you the full picture all the time. Just keep that in mind. 12 of 13. We're getting there. What do I do when I hit a plateau? When stagnation sets in, it's time to look carefully at your overall program and decide what changes need to be made up to kickstart progress once again. Sometimes it's a case of simply adding in more work or tweaking your diet by adding or subtracting calories, depending on the goal. Other times you have to ask yourself if you're truly giving it 100% every day in the gym. Simply showing up is not going to get the job done. You need to focus, concentrate, and give it your all for every set and rep. Another possibility is that your body and mind have adapted to exercise and types of cardio you've been doing and need to change. Try changing some of your weight training movements, switching to different cardio machines, using more or less resistance, or altering rest between sets. Once again, I agree with most of it. When there's a plateau, obviously there's a change to be made. What that change is, it's impossible to know without looking at individual situations. They said you might need to add more work. That might not be the case most of the time. Maybe you just have to add, you have to change like the weights that you're using or the reps that you're doing. You don't have to like add 15 minutes to your workout. That's probably not what's going on in that particular situation. So it's going to vary from person to person what you do for a plateau. Obviously, something needs to change. But a plateau is not always like an indicator that your program isn't working. Once again, your body's just going to like stall out for a few. It might stall out every once in a while. You're not going to make progress consistently all the time, or we'd all look the way we want it to look. Last but not least, I'm really struggling. How do I stick with it? This may be the toughest question of all to answer. The desire and will to keep pushing yourself day after day has to come from within. While the people close to you may lend their support, and you should question anyone who doesn't, it's still you that has to take the journey. You're the one who has to skip the cheap meals, pass on the booze, pump the weights, and sweat on the treadmill, bike, and stepper. But just like anything in life, few things worth having come easy. And honestly, nothing is more important than your health. That said, a few suggestions that I have that may help are: see if a friend, family member, or another gym goer will work out with you. Watch inspirational videos or movies. Always wear headphones with your favorite motivational quotes or music when you work out. Or contemplate how you'll feel after quitting. So, I have a whole episode of this podcast called Motivation is Bullshit. So a lack of motivation could very well be just a lack of motivation, but oftentimes it's just a lack of preparation. Having a program that you can do even on your worst days is going to be the biggest kind of thing in your favor when it comes to like losing motivation. If you are just really down in the dumps, you really can't do anything, you really don't feel like doing anything, if you have a program set in place where you can still execute and still do the things that you need to do in order to make progress, then it doesn't matter how motivated you are. It's all about the planning and the programming that you have in place. Of course, it's going to get to a point where you have to continue to add and add and add because, you'll stall out inevitably. So you might have to add more, and that might be out of like the range of like, I could do this on my worst day, but it's all about building the intrinsic motivation. Like they said, the desire to work out comes from within, and doing that and doing something that you can do over a long period of time builds intrinsic motivation. You can wear headphones and listen to music and bring a friend and a gym goer, but all of that is kind of extrinsic. Really building the intrinsic motivation within you to want to work out is going to be the best thing to sticking with it. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. It's not going to come immediately. But just building towards your desire to working out yourself is going to be super important. But that wraps up the Made to Excel Fitness University of Hard Knocks of Common Sense. This episode's running long. Once again, what do I do? Just a really quick weekly follow-up. Last week's episode 32, was the 4 secrets that a personal trainer does not want you to know. First and foremost, there might have been a technical issue on Apple Podcasts. So the actual podcast itself was like 33 minutes and some change. On Spotify, it uploaded as 33 minutes. On Apple Podcasts, it uploaded as 40 minutes. I don't know why. When you listen to the episode, it ends, at least for me, it ended where it needed to end, and it kind of just didn't go the extra 7 minutes. I thought there was going to be 6.5 minutes of dead air, but there wasn't. So I don't know if for some of you guys out there, you got like some sort of glitch. Hopefully it didn't happen. But it worked out well on Spotify. I think it worked out well on Apple Podcasts. If it did glitch in some way or shape or form, please let me know. I don't know how I'm going to fix it, but yeah, that was a technical glitch. Hopefully it didn't happen to you guys. But last but not least, the secret number 1 for last week's podcast, the 4 secrets that a personal trainer does not want you to know, is that everything works. And I don't think I emphasize enough that the results that you want will dictate the tools that you use. And I've said this on Instagram a bunch of times. If you're a person who has a very kind of general fitness goal, your fitness goal is not anything super crazy, you can absolutely achieve that on your own. You don't need to hire a personal trainer that's going to be super expensive and super costly to get you, to a very short location, right? You don't hire an Uber driver to take you down the street unless you're super lazy. It's all about what you want and how quickly you want to get there. For example, something happens around the house. I'm not a handyman type of person. I know how to hang stuff. Maybe if something really easy breaks, I can fix it. I can YouTube some stuff maybe. But if something really catastrophic happens, you probably should hire a professional because I'm not going to be able to fix it. So, it's all about what the outcome is and how you want to get there. If, the plumbing goes bad completely, that's something I could probably look up on YouTube because YouTube has everything, but it's not something that I would trust myself fixing. I would find a way to mess it up somehow. So that's a situation where you would need to hire a professional. If you're in a situation in your fitness journey that you have really lofty aspirations, or you're completely lost, you're completely like in the woods, you don't know which way is up, that's a situation where you have to hire a professional personal trainer. But at the end of the day, depending on your situation, you don't necessarily need a trainer. So this idea that personal trainers are necessary only applies to a certain population of people. Not everybody's going to need a trainer. If you only need to lose 4 pounds to make weight for whatever you're doing, you don't need a personal trainer to do that. You could do that easily on your own. If you're a person who wants to completely revamp your life, then yeah, get a trainer, hire professional help. But that wraps up today's show. My God. I'm losing my voice doing this podcast so much. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Helps other people find the podcast easier. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching there. Leave a comment. Share the episode with a friend who you think might enjoy it. If you have any questions for the Q&A, hit me up on Instagram at MTEFit. Follow me on Instagram at MTEFit. If you have any other questions and you don't have an Instagram, you can email me at made2excelfitness@gmail.com. I appreciate and love you all. Stay spooky, my friends. Peace.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, man? Hunter Henry, LA Charger tight end. Best big time shout out to your fitness podcast, the Made to Excel Fitness podcast. So super cool, man. Got a lot going on. Bolt ganger, don't bang.